Mafia boss was having dinner with his wife and her family until a black waitress whispered, "Run now." "You see, my love," Dominic said, the endearment now a mockery as he stared down at the woman who had planned his death. "While you were playing grieving widow, we were following the money." "Your money. Your family's money. All of it." Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand trembled around her untouched martini glass. "Dominic, please. I can explain." "Explain plotting with your family to have me blown to pieces?" His voice remained terrifyingly calm. "Explain how you smiled and poured my wine knowing bombs were already in place? Or perhaps you'd like to explain how it feels to realize your dead husband is very much alive and knows everything? If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button right now. And if you believe that karma eventually catches up to those who betray the people who love them, subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for more tales of justice, redemption, and unexpected second chances. I'm Lucy, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how 3 whispered words from a stranger saved a man's life, exposed a deadly betrayal, and ultimately led to a connection neither could have imagined. This is a story about the masks we wear, the truths we hide, and how sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. The private dining room at Salvatore's gleamed with old-world opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across damask tablecloths. Silver service caught fire with every gesture. Dominic Castellano surveyed the scene with the practiced calm that had made him both feared and respected throughout Chicago. At 45, he carried his power like a bespoke suit, comfortably, but with an awareness of its weight and responsibility. "More wine, my love?" Vanessa, his wife of 5 years, offered the bottle with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. At 32, she remained breathtaking, platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists, all gifts from the husband she'd married after a whirlwind 3-month courtship. "Thank you, Cara." Dominic covered her hand briefly with his own as she poured, his signet ring, the mark of the Castellano family's leadership for 3 generations, gleaming dully in the candlelight. Around them, Vanessa's family maintained the appearance of comfortable celebration. Her father Richard Hammond, a former state senator with ambitions that exceeded his legitimate income, raised his glass frequently in elaborate toasts. Her mother Elaine watched the proceedings with the calculating gaze of a woman who had orchestrated her daughter's advantageous marriage. Vanessa's brother Michael, recently appointed to a suspiciously senior position at the city's largest development firm, laughed too loudly at every remark. "To 5 magnificent years," Richard announced, raising his glass yet again. "And to my brilliant daughter for securing such a prosperous partnership." Something in his tone made Dominic's instincts flicker to attention. After 25 years in his family's business, he had developed a 6th sense for danger. Tonight, it hummed beneath his skin like distant thunder. "And to family," Vanessa added, her hand resting possessively on Dominic's arm. "The most important thing in the world." None of them noticed the young woman who approached their table, not one of their regular servers, but a new face. Her name tag read Naomi, and her dark eyes moved with careful attention across the room, lingering momentarily on the 2 men positioned discreetly near the service entrance. "Excuse me, sir," Naomi said, her voice low as she leaned between Dominic and Vanessa. "The chef has prepared a special dessert for your celebration." She placed an elegant chocolate creation before him. As she straightened, her hand brushed Dominic's shoulder, and she whispered 3 words that sent ice through his veins: "Run now." Betrayed. Dominic's expression remained unchanged, years of navigating dangerous waters having perfected his poker face. But his mind raced, cataloging details he dismissed earlier, Vanessa's insistence on this particular restaurant despite his preference for their usual place, the absence of his most trusted lieutenant who had been delayed by an unexpected call, the way Richard kept checking his watch. "Is everything all right?" Vanessa's voice carried practiced concern, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Perfect," Dominic replied, his tone revealing nothing. "This looks exceptional." I just need to step out for a moment, a quick call about that shipment. He rose with deliberate casualness, straightening his jacket. Business never sleeps, even for family celebrations. Don't be long, Vanessa smiled, though something flickered in her eyes, anxiety, perhaps, or calculation. We haven't even cut the anniversary cake. Dominic moved through the restaurant with measured steps, nodding to the maitre d' as he passed. In the hallway leading to the restrooms, he changed direction, slipping through a service door he'd noted upon arrival, a habit formed through decades in a business where exits often meant survival. The kitchen was a blur of controlled chaos, but Dominic moved with purpose, his presence commanding enough that no one questioned him. He was nearly to the rear exit when he sensed movement behind him. This way, Naomi appeared at his elbow, guiding him not toward the delivery entrance but through a narrow corridor to a staff stairwell. They're watching the main exits. Who's watching? Dominic asked, though he already suspected the answer. The gallows. 4 men outside, 2 at each entrance. And 2 more in cars across the street. Her voice was calm, professional. Your wife's brother made the arrangements 3 days ago. The betrayal, though suspected in the moment Naomi whispered her warning, still landed like a physical blow. Dominic had known the Hammond family was ambitious, had recognized their hunger for the power and wealth his position afforded. But he believed Vanessa's affection, if not love, was genuine. How do you know this? He asked as they descended the stairs rapidly. I work for Tony Ricci, she said, naming his oldest friend and most loyal captain. He's had concerns about your wife's family for months. When he couldn't reach you today, he sent me in. They emerged in an underground parking garage, where a nondescript sedan waited, engine running. Naomi handed him the keys. There's a burner phone in the glove compartment. Tony will call with a secure location in 30 minutes. Dominic took the keys, studying her face, the intelligence in her dark eyes, the composed set of her features. You're risking a lot, warning me like this. Mr. Ricci said you'd be worth the risk. Something flickered across her expression, respect, perhaps, or something more complex. He was right. Before Dominic could respond, the distant sound of an explosion rocked the building, the concrete beneath their feet trembling with the force of the blast. That would be the private dining room, Naomi said grimly. They weren't taking chances. Dominic stared at the ceiling, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. What would have happened to him had this woman not intervened? Your name isn't really Naomi, is it? A ghost of a smile touched her lips. No. It's Maya. Maya Winters. Well, Maya Winters, it seems I owe you my life. He opened the car door, then paused. Are you coming? That wasn't the plan. Plans change, Dominic said simply. Especially when someone tries to kill me. After a moment's hesitation, Maya slid into the passenger seat, and they drove away from the burning restaurant, from the family that had planned his death, from the life Dominic had believed secure. Neither spoke until they were miles away, the city lights fading behind them. Finally, Dominic broke the silence. Tell me everything. Tony's been suspicious for months, Maya explained, her eyes on the road ahead. Small things at first, your wife's family making connections with known Gallo associates, unusual financial movements, private meetings they tried to keep hidden. And Tony didn't think to tell me? A dangerous edge entered Dominic's voice. He tried. 3 times in the past month. Maya glanced at him. Each time, you dismissed his concerns as paranoia. Said he was seeing ghosts where there were none. Dominic fell silent, remembering those conversations. Tony's careful suggestions that perhaps the Hammond family wasn't as loyal as they appeared. His own irritated responses, defending Vanessa, assuring Tony that while her family might be opportunistic, they weren't stupid enough to betray him. Pride, he said finally. The oldest weakness in our business. Tony thought you might need more convincing than words, Maya continued. So he had me placed at Salvatore's 2 weeks ago to gather concrete evidence. I was supposed to document their meetings, record conversations, not witness an assassination attempt. The burner phone rang, interrupting whatever Dominic might have said next. Tony's voice came through, tense with relief. You made it out. Thank God. Maya got to you in time. Barely, Dominic replied. The Hammonds are dead? All of them in the dining room. The blast was thorough. Tony paused. The news is already reporting a gas explosion. 7 confirmed casualties. And the gallows? Melting back into the shadows for now. They'll be waiting to confirm your death before making any moves on our territory. Let them wait, Dominic said. As far as the world is concerned, Dominic Castellano died tonight alongside his wife's family. I need time to regroup, to understand the full scope of this betrayal. Where will you go? Tony asked. Better you don't know the specifics. Maya will be my only contact for now. Dominic glanced at her, receiving a nod of agreement. Keep the organization together, Tony. Make the appropriate shows of grief and confusion. Let our people know I'll return when the time is right. After ending the call, they drove in silence for nearly an hour, heading north toward the Wisconsin border. Finally, Maya turned onto a narrow road that wound through dense forest, eventually stopping before a rustic cabin set back from a small lake. Tony's hunting property, she explained. Off the books, paid for in cash years ago. No one in the organization knows about it except him, and now us. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and basic amenities. Maya moved through the space with familiar efficiency, checking security measures and supplies. There's enough food for 2 weeks, she said. Generator for power, satellite phone for emergencies. No internet, no cell service. Complete isolation. Dominic stood at the window, staring out at the dark water of the lake, his mind still processing the evening's events. In the space of hours, his entire world had collapsed. His wife, the woman he trusted enough to make vulnerable, had orchestrated his murder. Her family, who he protected and enriched, had aligned with his enemies. And now he was officially dead, hiding in a cabin with a woman he barely knew, dependent on her and Tony's loyalty. Why didn't I see it? He asked, not really expecting an answer. 5 years of marriage, and I never saw what she really was. Maya paused in her inventory of supplies. Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. Especially when they're skilled at showing us exactly what we want to see. And what did I want to see? Dominic turned to face her. A beautiful, adoring wife who validated your power and position. Who made the feared Dominic Castellano seem more human, more approachable. Maya met his gaze directly. A woman who seemed to love you for yourself, not your money or influence. The accuracy of her assessment struck him like another blow. You've been watching me that closely? It's my job to understand the people I protect. She shrugged slightly. And you're not as complicated as you think, Mr. Castellano. For the first time that night, something like amusement flickered across Dominic's face. I think after saving my life and driving me to exile, you can call me Dominic. If you're shocked by this level of betrayal, hit that like button right now. And if you're wondering how Dominic will rebuild his life and seek justice after such devastating treachery, subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for the next part of this incredible journey. The first week in the cabin passed in a strange limbo of shock and planning. Dominic spent hours on the satellite phone with Tony, piecing together the full extent of the Hammond family's betrayal. The picture that emerged was both devastating and infuriating. "They've been planning this for at least a year," Tony explained during one of their secure calls. "Vanessa's father made the first contact with the gallows 14 months ago, right after you expanded into the riverfront development." "The development I included him in," Dominic said, the irony not lost on him. "The one that tripled his net worth overnight." Apparently it wasn't enough. The gallows offered him political connections beyond Chicago, the kind of national influence he couldn't get from you. "And Vanessa?" Dominic asked, the question that had haunted him since that night. Tony's hesitation was answer enough. "We found her personal accounts. She's been moving money offshore for months. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts. Almost 2 million altogether." Maya watched as Dominic absorbed this information, his face hardening into the mask she imagined his enemies feared. She had spent the week observing him, the disciplined way he processed betrayal, transforming shock into strategic thinking, hurt into focused action. It was unlike anything she had witnessed in her years working security. "The gallows are already making moves on the South Side operations," Tony continued. "They're telling everyone you were the target all along, that the Hammond family were unfortunate collateral damage. And our people? Holding for now. Your death has actually united them against the gallows. But without clear leadership." Tony left the implication hanging. "We need more time," Dominic said. "Keep them together, Tony. Another month at most." After ending the call, Dominic remained at the table, staring at maps and notes they'd accumulated. Maya moved quietly in the kitchen, preparing coffee, a routine they'd fallen into without discussion. "You're handling this better than most would," she observed, placing a mug before him. "What would you prefer? Rage? Self-pity?" Dominic looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Neither would change what happened or help me reclaim what's mine. Most men in your position would be consumed by revenge fantasies." "Who says I'm not?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But revenge without strategy is just emotional indulgence. My father taught me that." "Tell me about him," Maya said, surprising herself with the request. "Your father." Dominic studied her for a moment, as if deciding whether the question was tactical or genuine. "Antonio Castellano was a builder," he said finally. "Not just of our organization, but of relationships, of trust. He understood that power maintained through fear alone is inherently unstable. Not the typical image of a mafia don. The typical image is a Hollywood fantasy," Dominic replied. "My father built legitimate businesses alongside the other operations. Created jobs, supported communities, protected neighborhoods when the police wouldn't. People respected him because he respected them first." "And you? Did you always know you'd follow in his footsteps?" Dominic's laugh held no humor. "I was studying architecture at Cornell when he was diagnosed with cancer. I came home for what we thought would be a few months. It turned into a crash course in running the family business as his health declined. You never went back. He died 11 months later. By then, I'd already faced my first challenge for control from my father's underboss." Dominic's eyes grew distant with memory. "I was 23, grieving, and suddenly responsible for hundreds of people's livelihoods, both legitimate and otherwise." Maya considered this revelation, this glimpse of the young man who had been thrust into power before he was ready. It added dimension to the controlled, calculating man before her. "And Vanessa? How did she fit into this world you inherited?" Something flickered across Dominic's face, pain quickly masked. I met her at a charity gala 5 years ago. She was beautiful, intelligent, seemingly unimpressed by my wealth or position. After years of women who wanted me for what I could give them, her apparent disinterest was refreshing. A calculated approach, Maya observed. Clearly. Dominic's voice hardened. 3 months later, we were married. Her family, with their political connections but dwindling finances, became part of my world. I trusted her with everything, my home, my business interests, my plans for the future. Everything except the truth about your organization. Dominic looked at her sharply. What makes you say that? You compartmentalize, Maya said simply. It's evident in how you operate, how you process information. I doubt Vanessa knew even half of what you really control in Chicago. A reluctant smile touched his lips. Tony said you were perceptive. He didn't mention how unsettling it would be. Occupational requirement, Maya replied, returning the smile briefly. Understanding people's patterns helps keep them alive. The moment of connection hung between them, unexpected and quickly set aside as Dominic returned to the maps. But something had shifted, a small barrier lowered between protector and protected. Days turned into weeks as winter settled around the isolated cabin. They established routines, Dominic working through strategies with Tony via the satellite phone, Maya maintaining security and supplies with periodic careful trips to different towns, never the same one twice. In the evenings, they reviewed information together, building a comprehensive picture of the conspiracy that had nearly killed Dominic and the current state of his organization in his absence. The gallows are getting bolder, Maya reported after returning from one supply run where she'd also gathered intelligence. They've taken 2 of your distribution centers on the west side. Your captains are divided on how to respond without clear direction. They need to see I'm alive, Dominic said, pacing the small confines of the cabin. But showing my hand too soon would be disastrous. What if they saw evidence of your return without actually seeing you? Maya suggested. Strategic moves that could only come from you, messages that only your inner circle would recognize as authentic? Dominic stopped pacing, considering her words. A ghost operation. Enough to rally our people and make the gallows nervous, without confirming I survived. Exactly. Maya leaned forward, her usual reserve giving way to strategic excitement. Tony could implement decisions that carry your signature style but maintain plausible deniability about your survival. It could work, Dominic agreed, a new energy in his voice. We'd need to be precise, target operations the gallows have already seized. They worked late into the night, developing the strategy, their heads bent together over maps and notes. When Maya finally stood to stretch, she found Dominic watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You're good at this, he said simply. The strategic thinking, the anticipation of moves and countermoves. You're wasted as security personnel. I'm exactly where I choose to be, Maya replied. I prefer action to boardrooms. And yet here you are, voluntarily exiled in a cabin with a dead man, planning his resurrection. The observation hung between them, acknowledging the strangeness of their situation, 2 people who had been strangers weeks ago, now sharing confined space and dangerous secrets. I believe in loyalty, Maya said finally. Tony saved my life once. I owe him this. Tell me, Dominic said, his voice softening from its usual command. Maya hesitated, then decided the truth was simpler than evasion. I was military, special operations. After my discharge, I struggled to adjust to civilian life. Made some bad decisions, trusted the wrong people. Ended up involved with a crew running protection rackets on the south side. The Donovan crew, Dominic guessed. They were eliminated 3 years ago. By your organization, Maya confirmed. I was collateral damage, in the wrong place when your men came to send a message. Tony found me bleeding out in that warehouse. Instead of finishing the job, he got me medical help, then offered me legitimate work once I recovered. Why would he take that risk? You'd have to ask him, Maya said with a slight shrug. All he ever told me was that he recognized something worth saving. I've been working for him directly ever since, off the books, handling special security concerns. Like keeping his boss alive when his boss was too stubborn to see the threat in front of him, Dominic said, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. Something like that. Their eyes met across the room, the shared understanding of debt and loyalty creating a connection neither had anticipated. For a moment, Maya saw past the power and control to the man beneath, a man who had lost everything and was fighting to rebuild from ashes. We should get some rest, she said, breaking the moment before it could deepen into something more complicated. Tomorrow we start bringing Dominic Castellano back from the dead. The ghost operation began subtly. A shipment the Gallows had seized mysteriously returned to Castellano hands. A key informant suddenly refused to cooperate with Gallo enforcers. Small, strategic moves that could only have been orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of Castellano operations. The Gallows are spooked, Tony reported during their nightly call. Vincent Gallo himself showed up at the riverfront property today, demanding to know who's giving orders. And our people? Dominic asked. Morale is improving. The rumors are starting, whispers that you survived, that you're watching from the shadows. I've neither confirmed nor denied, as instructed. Perfect, Dominic said, satisfaction evident in his voice. Increase pressure on the south side operations. I want the Gallows defensive, reactive rather than proactive. As winter deepened around their hideaway, the isolation created an unexpected intimacy. Confined by snow and security concerns, Dominic and Maya developed a rhythm of coexistence that gradually evolved into something more complex than protector and protected. They cooked meals together, shared books from the cabin's limited library, and spent evenings by the fire discussing everything from military strategy to Italian cinema. Maya discovered that beneath Dominic's controlled exterior lay a man of surprising depth, thoughtful, occasionally funny, with a genuine appreciation for art and literature that belied his public image. Dominic, in turn, found himself increasingly drawn to Maya's quiet strength, her direct manner, and the intelligence that missed nothing. She challenged him in ways few dared, questioned his assumptions without fear, and slowly, imperceptibly, became not just his security but his confidant. You never asked about my organization's illegal activities, Dominic observed one evening as they shared a bottle of wine by the fire. Most people can't resist their curiosity about the more sensational aspects. I don't need the details to do my job, Maya replied. And I'm not naive about how power works in Chicago. Every system has its shadow economy. That's a diplomatic way of avoiding moral judgment. Maya turned to face him fully. Would my judgment matter to you? The question hung between them, more intimate than any they'd shared before. Dominic considered it seriously, surprising himself with the realization that her opinion had come to matter a great deal. Yes, he said simply. It would. Something shifted in Maya's expression, a softening, a recognition. Then I'll tell you what I've observed. You're a man who values order over chaos, loyalty over expedience. You protect your people and punish those who threaten them. The methods may exist outside the law, but the principles themselves aren't so different from what I followed in the military. A generous assessment. Not generous. Honest. Maya held his gaze. I've spent months watching you rebuild from complete betrayal without once descending into cruelty or random violence. That says more about your character than any rumors or news headlines. The moment between them deepened, charged with unspoken possibility. Dominic found himself acutely aware of her proximity, of the firelight playing across her features, of how completely his perception of her had transformed from stranger to essential presence. "Maya," he began, uncertain for perhaps the first time in decades. The satellite phone rang, shattering the moment. Tony's voice came through, urgent and tense. "We have a problem. The gallows have taken Michael Hammond. He survived the explosion, he was in the restroom when it happened. They've been hiding him, using him for information. Now they're publicly questioning the narrative that you were killed." Dominic's expression hardened instantly. "Where is he now?" "Their compound on the north side. Heavily guarded." "This changes our timeline," Dominic said, already shifting into strategic mode. "If Michael Hammond is talking, he'll eventually reveal everything he knows about his family's plans, including any contingencies they might have arranged." After ending the call, Dominic turned to Maya, the intimate moment from minutes earlier completely set aside. "We need to return to Chicago. Now. Tonight." "In a snowstorm, with the gallows actively looking for confirmation you're alive?" Maya shook her head. "That's exactly what they want, to flush you out before you're ready." "I won't let them use Michael Hammond to dismantle everything I've built," Dominic said, his voice taking on the edge of command that had been absent in recent weeks. "Every day we wait gives them more advantage." "Then we don't wait," Maya agreed. "But we don't rush in blindly either. We need a plan that keeps your return controlled, on our terms." They worked through the night, developing a strategy that would allow Dominic to reclaim his position while minimizing risk. By dawn, as the snowstorm finally abated, they had a framework that balanced boldness with caution. "This could work," Tony said when they called to outline the plan. "But it's still incredibly risky. The gallows will be watching for any sign of your return." "Risk is unavoidable," Dominic replied. "Prepare everything as we discussed. We'll be in Chicago tomorrow night." As they packed the few belongings they would take, dismantling evidence of their presence in the cabin, Maya felt a strange reluctance. These months of isolation had created a bubble outside normal reality, a space where they had come to know each other without the complications of Dominic's position or the violence of his world. "Having second thoughts?" Dominic asked, noticing her hesitation. "Tactical considerations," Maya deflected. "Once we're back in Chicago, everything changes. The dynamics, the risks, the relationships." Dominic set down the bag he was packing and crossed to where she stood. "Some things don't have to change." The simple statement held layers of meaning neither was ready to fully articulate. Maya met his gaze, allowing herself to acknowledge what had been building between them, a connection forged in crisis but evolved into something neither had anticipated. "Chicago is different," she said quietly. "Your world there has rules, hierarchies, expectations. My world there is being rebuilt from scratch," Dominic countered. "Which means the old rules no longer apply." He reached out, his hand stopping just short of touching her face, still maintaining the boundary she had established months ago. "You saved my life, Maya. But more than that, you helped me see what matters. What's worth fighting for?" If you're invested in Dominic and Maya's growing connection amid such dangerous circumstances, hit that like button now. And if you're eager to see how they'll confront the gallows and the surviving Hammond brother, subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for the final part of this thrilling tale of betrayal, justice, and unexpected second chances. The return to Chicago happened under cover of darkness. Tony met them at a private airstrip outside the city, his relief at seeing Dominic in person evident in his usually stoic expression. "You look different," Tony observed, taking in Dominic's longer hair and the subtle changes 3 months of exile had wrought. "It might actually work in our favor. You're not quite the man they're expecting." "That's the idea," Dominic replied, embracing his oldest friend briefly. "What's the status on Michael Hammond?" Still at the Gallo compound. They've been parading him to key players, using him to solidify their claim that they've taken over Castellano territory legitimately rather than through assassination. And Vanessa? Maya asked, voicing the question Dominic hadn't. Tony's expression darkened. Playing the grieving widow perfectly. She's liquidated what assets she could access, made a show of donating to charities in your name. The press loves her, the beautiful, tragic widow carrying on her husband's philanthropic legacy. Dominic absorbed this information with the controlled calm Maya had come to recognize as his response to pain. She always did understand optics. They drove to a secure location, a penthouse apartment in a building owned through so many shell corporations that even most of Dominic's organization didn't know of its connection to him. From this command center, they would implement the carefully constructed plan to reclaim his empire and deal with those who had betrayed him. Phase 1 is already in motion, Tony explained as they reviewed operations on secure monitors. Key captains have been quietly informed of your survival. They're prepared to move against Gallo Holdings simultaneously when you give the signal. And the Hammond assets? Dominic asked. Frozen, as you instructed. Our financial team has been tracing the offshore accounts Vanessa established. We've located most of them, but haven't moved yet to avoid tipping our hand. Maya watched as Dominic absorbed and processed this information, noting how seamlessly he shifted back into his role as leader. The man from the cabin, reflective, occasionally vulnerable, was still there beneath the surface, but now layered with the authority required by his position. We move tomorrow night, Dominic decided. Coordinate with the captains. I want precision, not bloodshed. This is about reclaiming what's mine, not starting a war. After Tony left to make arrangements, Dominic and Maya were alone in the penthouse, the first moment of privacy since leaving their isolated cabin. The city lights spread below them, a glittering reminder of all that had changed. Having regrets? Dominic asked, noticing Maya's contemplative expression as she looked out over Chicago. Adjusting, she replied honestly. The cabin was simpler. Clearer. And this isn't? He moved to stand beside her at the window. This is your world, Dominic. The one you built, the one you're fighting to reclaim. Maya turned to face him. I'm still trying to understand my place in it. I thought I'd made that clear. His voice softened as he reached for her hand, the first deliberate contact he'd initiated between them. Whatever happens next, we face it together. The simple touch, his fingers interlacing with hers, carried more meaning than any elaborate declaration. Maya looked down at their joined hands, then back to his face, seeing both the powerful leader and the man she'd come to know in exile. Together, she agreed quietly. But first, we have a family empire to reclaim and some traitors to deal with. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of strategic preparation. Maya worked with Tony's security team, coordinating the complex operation that would simultaneously secure multiple Castellano properties while isolating the Gallos from their support network. Dominic held virtual meetings with his most trusted captains, his return from the dead galvanizing their loyalty and resolve. By nightfall, everything was in place. Dominic stood in the penthouse's main room, dressed once again in the impeccable suit that was his armor, the signet ring gleaming on his finger. Maya entered from the adjoining room, transformed from the practical, unassuming security operative of the cabin to a striking presence in tailored black, her natural authority evident in every movement. The teams are in position, she reported. Tony has confirmed that both Vincent Gallo and Michael Hammond are at the Northside compound for their weekly strategy meeting. And Vanessa? At the Drake Hotel, hosting a charity event in your memory. A hint of irony colored Maya's tone. The 6-month anniversary of your death apparently merits a gala fundraiser. Appropriate timing for a resurrection, wouldn't you say? Dominic's smile held no warmth, but his eyes, when they met Maya's, conveyed something beyond the cold calculation of revenge. "Are you ready?" "Are you?" she countered. "Once we do this, there's no going back to the shadows. I've spent enough time in the shadows." Dominic crossed to her, his hand rising to touch her face with a gentleness that belied the violence about to unfold. "It's time to reclaim what's mine, and perhaps claim something new as well." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility and the weight of all they'd shared. Then Dominic stepped back, once again the formidable leader preparing for battle. "Let's begin." The operation unfolded with military precision. Across Chicago, Castellano forces moved simultaneously against Gallo-held properties, reclaiming territories with minimal violence but maximum impact. The message was clear: Dominic Castellano was alive, and he was taking back what belonged to him. At the Gallo compound, the operation was more delicate. Maya led a specialized team that breached the security perimeter with surgical efficiency, neutralizing guards without raising alarms. By the time they reached the main house, where Vincent Gallo was meeting with his captains and Michael Hammond, the rest of the compound had been secured. The look on Vincent Gallo's face when Dominic walked into the room, a ghost made flesh, the man he'd believed dead for 6 months, was everything Dominic had imagined during the long nights of exile. "Impossible," Gallo whispered, his usual bravado evaporating instantly. "Evidently not," Dominic replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had always been more effective than shouting. "You should have confirmed the kill, Vincent. Basic principle." Michael Hammond, pale and trembling at the conference table, looked as though he might faint. "Dominic, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Dominic cut him off. "And you will, in detail. But not here." He nodded to Maya, who moved forward with 2 team members to secure Michael. "You can't just walk in here and take over," Gallo blustered, though his eyes darted nervously to the armed men now surrounding the room. "We have agreements with your former captains. Territories have been divided." "Had," Dominic corrected. "You had agreements. As we speak, every property you've seized in the past 6 months is being reclaimed. Every captain who aligned with you is being given a simple choice: renew their loyalty to me or retire permanently." "This is insanity," Gallo protested. "You'll start a war that will destroy us all." "There won't be a war, Vincent." Dominic's voice remained calm, reasonable. "Because you're going to publicly acknowledge that you attempted to assassinate me, failed, and are now returning all Castellano holdings without dispute." "Why would I ever agree to that?" Dominic nodded to Tony, who placed a laptop on the table and turned it to face Gallo. On the screen, financial records scrolled past, offshore accounts, transaction histories, communications logs. "Because we have documented every meeting between you and the Hammond family," Dominic explained. "Every payment, every promise, every detail of how you conspired to eliminate me and carve up my organization. The kind of documentation that would interest not only your Mexican suppliers, who value stability above all, but also certain federal agencies." The color drained from Gallo's face as he recognized the extent of the evidence against him. "What do you want?" "I've already told you. Public acknowledgement of what you did, complete withdrawal from all Castellano territories, and a non-aggression pact going forward." Dominic leaned forward slightly. "In exchange, you get to keep your life and your core operations." A generous offer, considering the circumstances. The negotiation that followed was brief and one-sided. Within an hour, Vincent Gallo had signed documents relinquishing all claims to Castellano territories and businesses, agreed to a film statement admitting his role in the assassination attempt, and accepted terms that would keep peace between their organizations going forward. As Maya supervised Michael Hammond's transfer to a secure location for more detailed questioning, Dominic pulled Tony aside. "Everything is in place for the Drake Hotel?" Tony nodded. "Security team is standing by." The charity event is in full swing, over 300 guests, including press. Vanessa has no idea what's coming. Good. Dominic checked his watch. I think it's time I paid my respects at my own memorial gala, don't you? The Drake Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with Chicago's elite, gathered ostensibly to honor Dominic Castellano's philanthropic legacy while raising funds for various charities. In reality, it was Vanessa's crowning performance, the devoted widow, elegant in black, accepting condolences and praise for carrying on her husband's good works. She was in the middle of a gracious speech, champagne glass raised to toast the man who taught me the true meaning of generosity, when the ballroom doors opened. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd as Dominic Castellano walked in, very much alive, with Maya and Tony flanking him. The champagne glass slipped from Vanessa's fingers, shattering on the stage as her carefully constructed world collapsed in an instant. Please, don't stop on my account, Dominic said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. I'm fascinated to hear about my generous nature from the woman who arranged my murder. Gasps and murmurs swept through the crowd as Vanessa struggled to regain her composure. Dominic, she managed, her voice barely audible. You're alive? Yes, despite your best efforts. He moved through the parting crowd toward the stage, every eye in the room fixed on this resurrection. Though I must compliment you on the lovely memorial. The floral arrangements are particularly tasteful. The surreal confrontation held the audience spellbound. Chicago's elite suddenly witnesses to a drama more compelling than any they could have anticipated. Security personnel discreetly secured the exits as Dominic ascended to the stage, standing before his wife with cold composure. Dominic, please, Vanessa whispered, visible only to him. Whatever you think happened. Save it, he cut her off, his voice low. Your brother Michael is already talking. We know everything, every meeting with the gallows, every offshore account, every detail of how you and your family plan to profit from my death. The color drained from Vanessa's perfect features as she realized the completeness of her defeat. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking escape and finding none. Ladies and gentlemen, Dominic addressed the crowd, his voice once again carrying authority. I apologize for the dramatic interruption. As you can see, reports of my death were premature. An unfortunate accident, misreported by overzealous media. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm grateful for your support of these worthy causes, and I encourage you to continue enjoying the evening's festivities. It was a masterful performance, acknowledging the impossible situation while providing a plausible public explanation that would save face for all involved. The wealthy and powerful in attendance, many with their own secrets to protect, tacitly accepted the fiction with relieved smiles and raised glasses. As the orchestra began playing again and the crowd cautiously returned to their conversations, Dominic took Vanessa's arm in what appeared to be a loving gesture but was actually an implacable grip. Smile, he instructed quietly. We're going to walk out of here together, and you're going to keep playing the role of delighted wife reunited with her husband until we're in the car. One wrong move, one hint to anyone, and I release everything we have on your family to both the press and the federal authorities. Understand? Vanessa's smile appeared instantly, the perfect mask sliding into place as she nodded almost imperceptibly. Together they made their way through the ballroom, accepting congratulations and expressions of amazement with practiced grace. Maya and Tony followed at a discreet distance, ensuring their uninterrupted exit. In the privacy of the limousine, Vanessa's facade crumbled. Dominic, you have to believe me. I didn't know what my father and brother were planning. I would never. Stop. Dominic's voice was quiet but final. We have your offshore accounts, Vanessa. The meetings you attended with the gallows. The phone calls to your brother minutes before the explosion. The evidence is comprehensive. What are you going to do to me? Real fear replaced the artificial emotion of moments before. Nothing as permanent as what you planned for me, Dominic replied, his gaze steady. You're going to sign divorce papers, relinquish all claims to Castellano assets, and then leave Chicago. Forever. And go where? Do what? Desperation edged her voice. Everything I have is tied to you. You have the $2 million you moved offshore, Dominic said coldly. Consider it the price of your life. A more generous settlement than you deserve. Maya, sitting opposite them, watched the exchange with quiet assessment. The woman who had orchestrated Dominic's death was now reduced to bargaining for her own survival, a stunning reversal of fortune orchestrated with the precision that had become their hallmark over the past months. Why not just kill me? Vanessa asked finally, a last desperate attempt to understand. After what you think I did. What I know you did, Dominic corrected. And I'm not sparing you out of mercy, Vanessa. Death would be too quick, too clean for what you deserve. I want you to live with the knowledge that you failed, that you lost everything you schemed for, that you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if today is the day I change my mind. The limousine pulled up to the penthouse building where documents were already prepared for Vanessa's signature. By dawn, she would be on a private plane to Europe, her connection to Dominic Castellano and Chicago severed permanently. As Maya supervised the final arrangements, ensuring Vanessa had no opportunity to alert anyone or attempt escape, Dominic stood at the penthouse windows, looking out over the city that had nearly been his grave and was now once again his domain. Was it what you expected? Maya asked, joining him after Vanessa had been escorted to a secure location for the night. Confronting her? I expected satisfaction, Dominic admitted. Instead, I felt nothing. She became irrelevant the moment I understood what she truly was. And what happens now? Maya asked the question that had hovered between them since their return to Chicago. With the organization secured, the gallows contained, and Vanessa eliminated as a threat, Dominic turned from the window to face her fully. Now we rebuild. Not just what was, but something better. We? Maya held his gaze, challenging him to be explicit about what had remained largely unspoken between them. These past months changed everything, Maya. Dominic closed the distance between them, his hand rising to touch her face with a gentleness few would associate with his name. You saw me at my most vulnerable, when everything was stripped away. And instead of seeing weakness, you saw possibility. I saw you, she said simply. Not the power or the position, just you. And that's what I want going forward. Someone who sees me clearly, who challenges me when needed, who stands beside me not out of fear or greed but out of choice. His eyes held hers. I want you, Maya. However you choose to be in my life. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Maya thought of the path that had led her here, from military service to criminal involvement, from near-death to redemption under Tony's guidance, from undercover waitress to the woman who had saved Dominic Castellano's life and, in the process, found something she hadn't known she was seeking. Your world is complicated, she said finally. Dangerous. Morally ambiguous at best. Yes, he acknowledged without hesitation. And I won't insult you by promising it could be otherwise. But within those complications, we could build something real. Something true. Maya considered his words, the offer behind them. In the months they'd spent together, she had seen both the ruthless leader and the thoughtful man, had witnessed his capacity for both calculated violence and unexpected kindness. She had no illusions about who he was or the world he inhabited. Yet she also recognized the rare opportunity before her, to stand beside a man who valued her strength rather than being threatened by it, who offered partnership rather than protection, who had seen her at her most vigilant and still wanted her at her most vulnerable. Together, she said finally, echoing the promise they'd made in the cabin months ago. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Dominic's smile, genuine, unguarded, transformed his face as he drew Maya closer. Together, he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that had been months in the making, built on a foundation of trust forged in crisis and deepened through shared purpose. When they finally parted, Maya's usual composure had softened, though her eyes remained clear and direct. "This won't be easy. Your captains, your associates, they'll have expectations, opinions about your choice. Let them," Dominic said with the confidence of a man who had lost everything and fought his way back. "The old guard already thinks I've returned from the dead. They can adapt to one more surprise." 6 months later, Chicago's underworld had stabilized under Dominic's renewed leadership. The Gallo organization maintained a respectful distance, the non-aggression pact holding firm. Michael Hammond had provided enough information to dismantle what remained of his family's influence before being allowed to leave the country with a fraction of his former wealth, a mercy granted not out of compassion but pragmatism. Vanessa had disappeared into European exile, her attempts to access additional funds thwarted at every turn by the financial safeguards Dominic had established. The divorce had been finalized quietly, the official story of their separation attributed to irreconcilable differences discovered after his miraculous survival of the restaurant explosion. The penthouse that had served as their command center during the reclamation of Dominic's empire had become their home, a space redesigned to reflect both his appreciation for classic elegance and her preference for practical comfort. It was here, on the balcony overlooking the city lights, that Tony found them on the anniversary of the night that had changed everything. "1 year," Tony said, accepting the glass of scotch Dominic offered. "Hard to believe. Some days it feels like a decade," Dominic replied. "Others, like it happened yesterday." Maya, leaning against the balcony railing, studied the two men, one who had saved her life years ago, the other whose life she had saved in turn. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. "The organization is stronger than before," Tony observed. "More cohesive. The loyalty is different now, less about fear, more about respect." "A lesson learned from nearly losing everything," Dominic acknowledged. "When you have to rebuild from nothing, you become very clear about what foundation you want to stand on." Tony's gaze moved between them, noting the subtle ways they oriented toward each other even in casual conversation, the unconscious alignment of two people who had developed complete trust. "And the foundation you chose includes some significant structural changes." Maya smiled slightly at the diplomatic phrasing. Tony had been the first to know about their relationship, had witnessed its evolution from professional respect to something deeper. He had also been the one to help integrate Maya into Dominic's organization, creating a position that utilized her security expertise while establishing her authority independent of her personal connection to Dominic. "Change was inevitable," Dominic said, his hand finding Maya's on the railing. "The old world died in that explosion. What emerged is something better." Later, after Tony had left, they remained on the balcony, the city spread before them like a map of possibilities. Maya turned in Dominic's embrace to face him, her expression thoughtful. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About how things turned out?" Dominic considered the question seriously, as he did all questions from her. "I regret not seeing Vanessa's true nature sooner. I regret the loss of innocent lives in the explosion." His eyes held hers. "But I can't regret where it led. Who it led me to." "A rather romantic view from a man who once told me sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford," Maya teased gently. "Nearly dying has a way of clarifying priorities," Dominic replied, echoing words he'd spoken in that snowbound cabin months ago. "As does finding someone worth changing for." The simple statement encompassed the transformation they had both undergone, Dominic moving from isolated power to shared strength, Maya from dutiful protector to equal partner. Neither was the person they had been that night at Salvatore's when 3 whispered words had altered the course of both their lives. "I've been thinking about those words," Maya said, as if following his thoughts. "Run now. Betrayed. So simple, yet they changed everything." the warning saved my life, Dominic agreed. But it was everything that followed that saved me. He drew her closer, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. The betrayal taught me to see clearly. The exile taught me to rebuild carefully. And you, Maya Winters, taught me that sometimes the most unexpected path leads exactly where you need to go. Below them, Chicago continued its eternal rhythm, a city of ambition and consequence, of shadow and light. But here, in this moment suspended above it all, two people who had found each other through betrayal's aftermath embraced a future neither could have imagined on that fateful night when a waitress leaned down and changed everything with 3 whispered words. If this story of betrayal, survival, and unexpected connection touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Lucy Love Stories for more tales of redemption, justice, and second chances. Remember that sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most meaningful transformations, and that loyalty, true loyalty, is perhaps the rarest and most valuable gift we can offer another person. What unexpected warning has changed the course of your life? Share your story in the comments below, and join our community of storytellers finding meaning in life's most challenging moments.